Welcome back, everybody. This is another great episode of Indie Reads Aloud. Tonight, we have a repeat offender, one of my favorite authors in the world. Mark Love is joining us again for this episode, and he's going to read from his latest book, which is called The Wayward Path. Welcome back, Mark.
Why, thank you, Diane. It's always a pleasure to see you.
I'm always so happy when you come on the program because your books are just so great. Your writing is so tight. I really love sharing you with the world. So I'm very, very grateful that you're willing to keep coming back.
It's always a delight to be here. And I was cracking up when you said I'm a repeat offender. I was like, yeah, that's pretty true. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know Mark, let me tell you a little bit about him. Mark Love lived for, and by the way, that's his real name, Mark Love. It's wonderful. You got to thank your dad for that one because that's just awesome. Mark Love lived for many years in the metropolitan Detroit area where crime and corruption are always prevalent. As a former freelance reporter, Mark honed his writing skills covering features and hard news. He is the author of the Jamie Richmond romance mysteries, Devious, Vanishing and Fleeing Beauty, and the novella Stealing Haven. The short story Don't Mess with the Gods was written with Elle Nina Castle and was included in the Magic Mischief anthology. Mark also wrote the Jefferson Chene mystery series, including Y319 and Your Turn to Die. Mark now resides in West Michigan, the other side of the state, where he enjoys a wide variety of music, books, travel, cooking, and the great outdoors, and hanging out with people of my particular brand of insanity. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to see you.
I'm so glad you're back. Here's what I love about hosting a podcast. I get to gush about the people I like in the world. So I'm super happy you're here.
Always a lot of fun. We have some great conversations.
We do indeed. So The Wayward Path, this is the fourth book in the series?
This is the third book in the Jefferson Chene series.
Okay.
The books are all told from Chene's perspective. Chene is a detective sergeant with the Michigan State Police. He's a little flawed character, and he's I guess the best way to describe him, he's a borderline insomniac.
Okay.
Which I guess gives him more time to focus on the different crimes that he's investigating and what goes on. If anybody is familiar with the Metro Detroit area, Jefferson and Chene is an intersection near the downtown Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I came up with the idea for the character. I said, I like that street name. I thought I want him to be an orphan. He was abandoned at birth, and he was found by a couple of Catholic nuns that were out for an evening stroll. And when they called the cops, there was a clerical error. Instead of writing baby Johnny Doe, they wrote Jefferson Chene as the intersection for where the name was supposed to be, and it stuck.
Sounds like fate.
I've actually had people that have gone to that intersection looking for him and taken their picture that they found Jefferson Chene, but it wasn't what they were looking for.
That's so great. And living in Detroit or near Detroit myself, I've been to that intersection, and it's not what people expect. So that's kind of fun that you imbue your stories with the spirit of Detroit and all its ups and downs and foibles and wonderment.
I think Detroit is a character in my stories. I mean,
sure, really I would agree with that.
Big part of that, the location is so vital to the story itself.
Absolutely, I agree. So, can you give us a little bit of the setup for this book?
Okay, this book is it's a cold case investigation. There was a young girl, teenage girl, that was attending a Catholic high school, and she disappears. And 15 years later, her remains are found. And when they're discovered, originally the Detroit police are starting the investigation, but before they can get very far into it, the FBI swoops in and takes over because they find something with her remains that ties to a retired mobster by the name of Leo Agonasti.
Okay, this is where we insert the tension music, right?
You know,
Dun,
so
dun, dun.
they're looking for Leo Agonasti, who was very involved with one of Detroit's large organized crime families. But when he gets word that they're trying to come in to arrest him, Agonasti disappears. And he reaches out to Chene, which is going to be part of this first scene that we're going to talk about, as to how Chene gets involved into this case and is actually reluctantly working with the FBI to try, and they're trying to find Agonasti. Chene's trying to find the killer because they want to do justice for this poor girl that was killed 15 years ago.
This sounds like a great story. How long ago did it come out?
It was released in August of this year.
Wow, it's a brand new book.
It's really brand new. It hasn't had a birthday yet. It's had a lot of really good responses.
Yeah, I've seen all the amazing press for this book. I'm really, really pleased for you.
I'm very happy that it's getting a lot of action, and I think it's
Yeah.
going to start gaining some traction here. And I had one reader that said, "This would make such a great movie." And I'm like, "Yes, let's go."
Yes, let's do that.
I'm ready for that. But,
So I'm done talking about it. I want to hear it. I know that our audience would love to hear it. So when you are ready, please, Mark, take the microphone and read aloud.
all right. And as Gleason used to say, and away we go.
And away we go.
All right. This is the first scene where Chene is going to get involved in this homicide investigation. So here we go. I can't remember the last time you actually went on vacation, Pappy. Nice to know you're confident in our abilities to keep things going. All okay, Chene, but keeping an eye on them young'uns will keep you busy. Suarez is still getting used to the way we do business. I'll work with Suarez. It was early Monday evening. We were in Captain Taffy Cantrell's office at the state police post. From the open casement window behind him, I could hear the ebb and flow of traffic racing along Gratiot Avenue. For many people, the workday was over, which meant rush hour was winding down. In Motown, rush hour can last for 2 hours on either end of the usual 9 to 5. The rest of the squad was gone. Cantrell and I were reviewing pending investigations. A month ago, we'd wrapped up a complicated homicide that uncovered almost $500,000 in precious gems, multiple extramarital affairs, and involved more than 100 suspects. That's the kind of major case this team of detectives handles. Now we were looking at a string of home invasion robberies, a series of luxury car thefts, and an extortion case with a local surgeon who may have been indiscreet a time or two. Don't need the whole squad on any of them, Cantrell muttered in his southern drawl. Y'all probably cracked the blackmail before the weekend. We can have Kozlowski and Atwater run the home invasions. I'll take Suarez with me on the extortion. Y'all dropping the girlies on cars? I shook my head. Spears can review the files and look for a pattern. She did well with that on the serial killer. If there's a system in play, she'll find it. Then I'll take her and Suarez to follow it up. Happy grunted his approval. Tilt of his head preceded a plume of cigarette smoke. It drifted out the window. Smoking wasn't allowed in public buildings in the state. Happy torched the memo. If he stepped outside every time the nicotine urge hit, his office would have to be a lean-to in the parking lot. You're looking forward to that vacation? Yup, leaving Friday. 2 weeks in the Blue Ridge Mountains. No Yankees allowed. Y'all on your own. Think you can handle anything pops up? We got it covered. A lot can happen in a few days. A knock on the door frame interrupted my response. The desk sergeant poked his head into the room. Sorry to bother you, Captain. Chene has a very impatient visitor. Expecting someone? I shook my head. You get a name, Burnley? The sergeant nodded. Not sure I believe it. Maximo Aurelio. I'd been slumped in the chair, legs out and crossed at the ankles. Before I could move, Cantrell was at his computer, clicking buttons and pulling up the security camera that monitors the lobby. Maximo Aurelio was standing 3 feet from the reception desk. His hands were out, palms up and empty. He was looking right up at the camera. Hope you all ain't got a date, Chene. I pushed out of the chair. I'll go see what he wants. Happy was right beside me. We go together. Max greeted me with a bone-crushing handshake and a brief attempt at a grin. He and Cantrell exchanged nods. We led him to the conference room and got settled around the table. This was no social call. Just the idea of Max being inside a state police post was enough to put me on edge. Maximo Aurelio was a reputed lieutenant for one of the Detroit area's largest organized crime families. There was a history of violence that many had attributed to him over the years without success. 10 years ago, Max, who was also known as Maxie A, had gone into retirement. The mob had changed a lot in the 21st century. He was supposedly living a quiet life, spending a great deal of his free time with Leo Agonasti, a childhood friend. If Max was a lieutenant, then Leo was a captain. Our paths had crossed occasionally since I became a cop. Happy took his usual spot at the head of the conference table. He turned his full attention on Max. The idea of him sitting calmly in the middle of a state police post was surreal. Cantrell waved a finger back and forth, his variation of get on. Max understood the unspoken message. The FBI has an arrest warrant out on Leo for murder, Max said slowly, his gravelly voice reaching even lower on the register than normal. Why come to us, I asked. Leo's instructions. When he heard the charges, he told his lawyer 2 words, get Chene. As far as I know, he's not saying anything else. The lawyer called me. Guess she didn't know you. Where's Leo at? Doing his impersonation of Harry Houdini, Max said. Who dat? Max swiveled to face Cantrell. He disappeared. I think he's still in the area, but can't even begin to guess where he's at. Chances are he's going to keep moving. Will Agonasti try to leave the country, I asked. The FBI may be watching the airports. TSA could have an alert already. I don't think he's running. Leo's never been the type to run away from trouble. But he's no murderer, Chene. You gotta believe that. Pappy squinted at Max. We ain't gotta believe nothing. We're talking about criminal activity. Y'all ain't exactly a couple of Girl Scouts selling cookies. Say whatever you want, but Leo was a background guy. He's not violent. Never was. He couldn't murder someone. He had y'all for that. Max clenched his jaw before swinging to face me. This isn't about me. It's about Leo. He needs your help. Can you at least check into the warrant? My gaze flicked at Cantrell. He gave me a minuscule nod in response. The FBI doesn't normally handle homicide investigations. Are you sure your information is accurate? Max slid a business card across the table to me. For the FBI logo and contact information for the Detroit office. I turned it so Pappy could see it. His stare was burning through me. Getting involved in an ongoing federal investigation was contrary to the way Cantrell operated. There would be the question of jurisdiction. The feds were rarely inclined to play nice with local agencies. But I didn't think walking away was an option. I'm going down there. Pappy shook his head. We going. Max raised his palms. I'm not stepping foot in that building. Surprised they're not looking for me right now. Give him time, Cantrell growled. They ain't over yet. Now, this next scene would take place on Tuesday evening. Chene has been tagged with an FBI agent by the name of Banks, and they are investigating this case together. The sun was beginning its descent when he got back to my place. Banks left a few minutes ago. After a long day of chasing leads, I was tired, but knew sleep would be sporadic if it arrived at all. The late lunch was a distant memory. What I really wanted to do was clear my head and put this case on hold for a little while. Simone answered on the first ring. It must be telepathy. I was just thinking about you, she said. That's why I called. Soft laughter echoed in my ear. Liar. I didn't expect to hear from you with this new investigation you're on. We had talked briefly last night, and without getting into details, I told her there was a good chance I'd be tied up all week. Cantrell would never object to a little downtime. Know it's short notice, but thought you might want to grab a drink. Where are you? She asked. My house, but I could be near your place in half an hour. There was no hesitation. She named a bar in Madison Heights, which was about halfway between our respective homes. 20-minute chain, just one drink, an early meeting in the morning and need my beauty rest. See ya. A suave, charming guy would have made some comment that Simone was so beautiful, she could have skipped the whole night's sleep without it having a negative impact on her looks. But I'm a long way from charming. Jumped in the car and headed for the bar. Simone was waiting in the parking lot when I arrived. She greeted me with a long hug and a slow, soft kiss. We went through the bar to a large wooden deck out back. The waitress appeared quickly. Both ordered glasses of wine, and Simone pointed at the menu. The pub was known for their nachos, with several types of meat and cheeses, and enough veggies to satisfy a vegan. Out here, we were alone. There were many people inside watching baseball games on the large screen monitors. Our wine arrived as we talked. Within minutes, the nacho appeared as well. They were as good as advertised. I was pleased to see Simone eat her fair share after liberally pouring on some spicy salsa. With the food gone, we sat there quietly. Faintly in the background, jazz was playing. I noticed speakers mounted on the overhang. Feeling restless, I got to my feet and leaned against the railing that circled the deck. Simone gave me a shy smile as she stood beside me. Do you realize in the time we've been dating, there are still so many things about you that I don't know, she said. I'm an open book. That earned me a burst of laughter. Yes, and I'm Venus de Milo. Nice to see you, Venus. It was impossible not to smile with her, no matter how tired I was. What do you want to know? Keep in mind, we both have a very early morning. He thought that over briefly. How did you ever learn your way around town after being raised in an orphanage? I'm pretty good with the area, but you seem to know where everything is. Motion to her. Raise your left hand. She did, giving me a quizzical look. Welcome to Michigan. You know the lower peninsula is shaped like this. Of course. Let me have your right hand. It will be easier to show you this way. Taking her by the wrist, I turned her palm so she could see it in the dim outdoor light. Down here, near the base of your thumb, is roughly where Detroit is. I slid 2 fingertips across her palm toward her index finger. Her skin was soft and warm. This gets you near Dearborn and maybe a little bit towards Weston. Her shoulders were swaying ever so slowly. Simone's gaze kept flicking from my fingers to my face. A little further this way gets you closer to Romulus, Belleville, and Ann Arbor. I continued in what would be a westerly direction, then moved up from the palm to the base of her first 2 fingers. Livonia, Plymouth, Northville, Farmington, Novi, and Wixom are this way. Simone drew a deep breath and moved in front of me. She turned, pressing her back against my chest. Her hips were moving in rhythm with her shoulders. In the background, Jazz music seemed to grow louder. Going, she whispered. I dragged my fingertips back towards her thumb. Southfield, Royal Oak, Clawson, Birmingham. Further east, you get Mount Clemens and St. Clair Shores. A little lower, you have the Grosse Pointes. Without noticing it earlier, I was matching her movements, a slight sway of the shoulders and hips. She leaned back against me. My right hand still held hers. At some point, my left hand found her hip. Movement at the doors of the saloon caught my attention as the waitress started to come check on us. She hesitated, flashed a smile, and ducked back inside. Jane, her voice was little more than a whisper. Yes. Either take me home or I'm going to jump you in the parking lot. What about your early morning? I'll be fine. The question is, will you be? I couldn't see her face, but knew she was smiling. Without a doubt. She turned around in my arms. Better kiss me now so I don't lose interest. No man alive could resist that request. A long, slow kiss followed. Then she pushed me away, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. I threw cash on the table, nodded to the waitress, and followed. At her apartment, Simone returned to the comfort of my arms. You expect me to believe you know your way around town because of landmarks on your hand? I shrugged, along with maps and a GPS. All right, this third scene that I want to read is the next day. So this would be Wednesday afternoon. And again, Chene is working with FBI agent Banks. They're still following up on leads in their investigation. During late afternoon, Fenn emailed me the forensic report. I read it while we grabbed burgers from a Woodward Avenue diner. He confirmed that Charity Gray had been strangled. May not have taken much pressure since she was such a petite girl. Beyond that, there was not much information that was useful. Several of the houses we visited earlier had been empty. Regular people working regular jobs. We were going to swing back through them after 5, just in case. There are times when you get nothing. Happy was fond of saying, sometimes y'all is good, and sometimes y'all gets lucky. And sometimes it's a little bit of both. I was hoping this would be one of those times. Banks surprised me. He'd gotten a clerk at the bureau to pull up details on all the names of the residents in our area, going back to the date of the murder. If the people had moved, I was hoping we could get their current addresses. Somewhere, somehow, someone had seen something. Young girls don't just disappear in the middle of a spring afternoon without a trace. The sun was setting. Banks covered her mouth with the back of her hand, smothering a yawn. We were down to the last name on the list, a couple named Griffith. The house was on the corner of a residential side street. Banks popped her door as I rolled to a stop at the curb. Stretching as I got out, there was a flicker of movement from between 2 houses across the street that caught my eye. The same instant, I heard a dull snick that was too familiar by far. Banks moved forward, letting the door slam behind her. Down! Instinctively, I dove across the hood on my stomach and tackled her as her shot rang out. What followed sounded like open session at a firing range. Several guns were involved. The windows of the Pontiac imploded. What the hell? She screamed. Stay low. Keep the engine block in front of you. Banks had her weapon drawn. Crawling toward the rear, I drew my gun. Risking a peek through the shattered windows, I saw 3 guys spread out across the street. 2 had assault rifles of some sort. They were on the ends. The guy on the left was tall and lanky. The one on the right was shorter and stocky. The man in the middle had a revolver in each hand, a character from an old Western. He was the shortest of the 3, wearing a suit and tie. He was methodically firing, first one gun, then the other, taking his time with his shots. I squirmed low, sliding off the curb and under the Pontiac. They blew the tires. I wouldn't have much time to get out before the car settled on its rims, but the element of surprise might be in my favor. Quickly, I lined up the guy to the right. Couldn't see much. Hopefully, it would be enough. A squeeze of the trigger sent 3 rounds at his legs. He danced when hit, still firing his assault weapon. Bullets sprayed the air. Without hesitation, I swung to the left and got off 3 more shots. One was close, but then the rear tire exploded with a bang. I wiggled backward, not wanting to push my luck. Banks was kneeling by the front wheel. She was pumping rounds at the guy on the right. As I glanced through what remained of the windows, she nailed him in the face. He dropped immediately, a heap. I slid closer to the trunk and aimed at the guy with the rifle. He staggered to his left. Someone was screaming in the distance. I only hope it wasn't an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. Banks was beside me now. She slumped against the rear door. Her face was ashen. There wasn't enough light remaining to see much else of her. You hit? In the side. Don't know if it was a round or shrapnel. She gritted her teeth. Hurts like hell, but I got that guy when you shot him in the legs. You left. She nodded. You got a plan? Wait until they're out of ammunition or reinforcements arrive. That's not a plan. The rifle has got to run out soon. When he goes to switch the clip, that's when we move. You're crazy. I've heard that before. Cover me. I'm going for that tree to get a better angle, I said. There was a chatter as more rounds slammed against the Pontiac. Banks raised up enough to put the barrel of her gun where the backseat window used to be. She risked a glance at me and nodded. I got to my feet and ran. Beyond the driveway was a sizable oak tree. I was hoping it was solid enough to give me some protection. Banks fired. I swung my arm to the right, squeezed off several more shots at the rifleman. Something tugged my arm. I dove for the grass behind the tree and rolled to my knees. A metallic clatter sounded across the street. I peeked around the tree's trunk. The rifleman was down. So was Banks. The gunslinger stood in the middle of the street, one arm pointed in my direction, the other where Banks had been crouching. My left arm felt funny. A glance at my weapon confirmed it was empty. I pulled a fresh clip from the shoulder holster and managed to load it. I fumbled my left hand in place and racked the slide, sending a fresh shell into the pipe. Bringing the gun up, I pushed off the tree and got to my feet. The gunslinger was slowly advancing in my direction. The angle he was taking, the tree wouldn't do me any good. He lowered his left hand and shoved the gun into the pocket of his jacket. An evil grin crossed his face. Don't need that one anymore. It's just down to you and me. You're screwed. You're just so stupid that you don't realize it yet. My gun was pointed at his core. It was only 15 feet away. Doubt I could miss from here. He wrapped his knuckles against his chest. Body armor. I didn't move. Latest and greatest, so they say. Can stop a shot from an elephant gun. You're assuming I'll shoot for center mass. Of course. That's what they teach you, Boy Scout. Started to bring his right hand up to bear on me. This is state of the art. There's nothing. Tilting my weapon slightly, I fired twice, striking him in the forehead. He flopped backward on the ground. I walked over and kicked his gun underneath the Pontiac's rear wheels. Never was a Boy Scout.
Thank you so much. See, now I have another book I have to read. Thanks for that.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What was your favorite part about writing this book?
I really liked digging into a cold case and trying to come up with some different components of this. And as usual, ideas will percolate and lead to something else. For example, when Charity Gray's remains are found, I worked it out so that I could use a cadaver dog or a human remains dog. And I had actually met a lady that trains them. So
Very
I was
neat.
able to interview her and get some details for that and in the background and kind of go from there. And then part of the investigation, I wanted to get more of an understanding about Charity as a student and the people that knew her well. And so I was picking all the different topics that, the subject she would be studying.
Sure.
And one of them I wanted her to have was history. Well, I have an old, very good friend by the name of Eric, who is a Civil War fanatic. And it dawned on me, I need to interview Eric. So I contacted him and we must have talked for an hour and a half going over details about the war. And because I wanted the history professor to be like Eric, be really involved in this, which fit in so well with the story. And it was just like one thing clicked to another, clicked to another.
I'm continually shocked, especially in my own writing, but also in reading my friends' writing, how much research fiction takes. You
Oh
can't
yes.
just make stuff up. You have to actually figure it out. So
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
super fun. But
I had
that's
I've
half of why being an author is such a great joy, is because we get to go down these rabbit holes and really have fun doing it.
I actually had somebody approach me at one of the recent events that I was attending, um, selling the books and that, and he was asking me to describe it. And I was talking about one of the books and then another one, and she said, "This sounds like you just make stuff up." And I started laughing. I said, "It's fiction. Of course I make it up. I do a
Yes.
lot of research with it
Well,
too."
yeah, but yes, we do make stuff up for a living.
That's what we do,
Yeah.
And as you know, I don't work with an outline. I just sort of,
Yeah, I don't
seat of
get
my
it.
pants kind of thing. And I've had more people look at me and say, "How in the world can you put all this together?"
It's
When
because you're just that good, Mark.
either that or I'm just that crazy, It's just
Maybe a
I
little bit of both.
yeah, very much so. As Pappy would say, a little bit of both. So
I am so glad that you came to read for us again. I'm really looking forward to reading this book myself. Everybody, check out the show notes. You'll see links to how to find the book and to Mark's website to learn more about him. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Diana, it's my pleasure as always. It's great to see you and to chat with you.
And you've got more books, so we'll be seeing you again.
I'm like a bad penny. I always turn up.
That's a good thing. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Diana. You too.